Timeless Conversations. July 25, 2014. Dear Arcturians and/or Antarians, I am addressing you both so that either or both of you can assist me. I am in the midst of a huge transition. I know enough to know what I don't know, and right now I feel like I am stepping over a cliff and into a bottomless canyon. Of course that is an exaggeration in terms of physical reality, but pretty correct in terms of emotions. It is not that I am having a lot of negative emotions, but I am definitely not having a lot of positive ones either. It is more like my emotional body is in such transition within the now that the polarities of good and bad emotions are overlapping and even interlacing. I am not unhappy. In fact, often I am very happy, but I do have moments of, not really sadness, but more like grief. Yes, I am having sadness that is more like a grief. However, the grief is also filled with expectancy that what I am now apparently losing will be replaced with something that is currently beyond my ability to put into language. I was told to open my long-closed file on the Antarians who came into my consciousness in the mid-1990s. I also discovered the long-lost file about Jackal, my Antarian warrior self. I was wondering why this information pulled on my consciousness begging to be released. Then, I realized that we, that is all of us who are warriors for Gaia, are fighting a war just as Jackal fought in the galactic wars against the Orion Draconians and their allies. Our war is not to be fought with weapons and spaceships, but with our minds and hearts. At least, in a real war, the enemy is known and over there in their starships. Our war is more with our own addiction to third-dimensional thinking and emotions, as well as our habit of thinking and perceiving the third dimension as our real world. We are being called upon to believe that what we have known as real for myriad incarnations on Gaia's third-dimensional planet is actually a holographic illusion. Therefore, all our external enemies, all our external perceptions, and needs are only holographic projections of light against the mind screen of our third-dimensional brain. Meanwhile, I think I am getting what I have always wanted. But sometimes I feel sadness that what I had instead seems to be leaving. Why did this not happen sooner? And other thoughts time-based flood my mind. Simultaneously, I am having many journeys beyond time in which I blink out for literally a second or two, but come back to the 3D feeling disoriented and confused. Interestingly, before it was the higher frequencies of reality that confused me, but now it is the third dimension that clouds my mind and encourages the emotions of something is happening. I know that statement seems like a thought, which it is, but it feels like an emotion. My thoughts seem no better than to try to figure it all out yet. On the other hand, my emotions want to rush to anxiety or grief, that is until I meditate. Once I meditate and/or communicate with my higher expressions of self, the anxiety becomes hope and the grief becomes joy. But then, ego pops in to tell me that I'm likely crazy, and, who do you think you are? Why does that final question come in just when I feel my true reunion with self? Yes, of course, the ego is threatened that I will leave it behind in the crazy 3D world. Dear ego, do not be concerned. I, my multidimensional consciousness, am just scouting out the trail. I will come back for you, and for Gaia. That is, I hope I am scouting out the trail and not just daydreaming. However, daydreaming about a fifth-dimensional reality that I can easily slip into is much better than worrying about the bills I can't pay or whatever is happening with my body. Hence, I choose to go with the ascension version of reality. Yes, ascension is the reality that I am choosing to attend to, that is most of the time. When I talk to you dear Arcturians, Antarians, and other members of my higher self, I get great comfort. For one thing, in order to communicate with you, I have to pull my consciousness up from the gutter and into the reality that is based on unconditional love. To stay aligned with my higher dimensional reality, I need to stay away from the bad news that confronts us everywhere we look. And most importantly, we have to call on the higher dimensional members of our self, which I am now doing. I will stop talking now and listen for your answers. Dear one, We the Antarians are the first to answer you, as we have been in frequent communication with you in your now. Also, we have waited for many of your years, since 2007, which was 10 years after the last communication with you in 1997. To us in the timeless fifth dimension, there was no wait, but for you there was 10 years of no communication. Actually we communicated in 2002, but you lost our message. The physical world can be a very distracting place. Also, your relationship with your Arcturian self was greatly expanding during that duration of that time. You have been called back to us, as it is the now for you, meaning all who find themselves reading this message, to activate the spiritual warrior. You might ask us, what is a spiritual warrior? We answer you by saying that as a spiritual warrior you fight for the fulfillment of your personal mission or reason for incarnation with the sword of truth, and the shield of your threefold flame. Your purpose is not just personal. In fact, it is primarily planetary and intergalactic. As a spiritual warrior, you wear your body as your uniform, your high heart as your multidimensional computer, and your third eye as your interdimensional communication system. You are not above the sensation of fear, as fear is not just an emotion. Fear is a warning that your resonance is lowering and is the now to recalibrate your consciousness, and thus your thinking, emotions, perceptions, and communications. We Antarians refer you now to the Arcturians who will augment our message. Greetings, we are the Arcturians. We will begin by reminding you of a morning message we sent you on April 28, 2014. That morning you woke up with an inner message. With eyes half opened, you reached for the pen and journal by your bed and wrote what you heard. With this decree I declare that I am ready to release the protection of fear, and walk the path of loving surrender. I am ready to transmute all fear into unconditional love, as I choose to walk the path of the now and live within the one. Your 3D self did not know you were ready for this choice, so we reminded you that you were, indeed, ready. With the above reminder, we return you to 1996 and the Antarians. May 2, 1996. Dear Commander Maltese, please assist me more in learning how information is sent from the higher dimensions into the third dimension. We are happy to answer your question. The transmission of information from the higher dimensions to lower dimensions is a process of transduction. The vibratory rate of the message must be transduced up and down the vibratory scale. First, the call is made. At this point in your Earth time, 1996, there is a great call from both directions of the spectrum. There are many beings, such as ourselves, who send a homing beam to all those who can be receptive to it. This beam of light is to assist you to recognize the frequency of your higher dimensional home. There are also many confused and frightened earthlings who are calling for higher assistance. The ones who are receptive to our messages are those who are of a higher resonant pattern. Those who are able to believe that it is possible to receive a message from the higher dimensions. Those who are clear enough in their minds and emotions to retain the message that was transmitted to them with some degree of clarity. Those who wish to transfer that information from their superconscious, higher self into their conscious third-dimensional self. Of course one can, and many do, receive messages and are unable to ascertain the true source of that message. This situation allows that person to access their higher creative energies without causing too much of a strain on their 3D belief systems. However, if one cannot be clear as to the source of the message, their chances of distortion of the message are much greater. Without a conscious connection to the source of the higher dimensional information, it is more likely that there will be a third-dimensional belief system that will limit the full meaning of the message. Usually, until known guides are established, the call is sent out from the physical in a wide spectrum sweep such as, "Dear God." This call is always answered, but it is the belief system of the caller that determines who answers the call. We now return you to another Arcturian timeless message that was sent to you via a dream in what you would think of as a more recent time. July 6, 2013. I had a dream this week in which I was ascending. I woke up suddenly at about 3 a.m. and heard in my head, "I just had a dream of ascension." However, I could not remember how it felt. Of course, I then had to go to the bathroom. When I came back to bed, I tried to remember the feeling from the ascension dream, but I was distracted because my body was too hot. It was not a hot night, but the heat came from inside of me. I lay in bed for a while feeling the intense inner heat. Eventually, I fell back asleep. In the morning, I remembered the experience, but I still could not remember how the dream felt. Fortunately, I had an acupuncture appointment that day and determined to remember the feeling of my dream then. When I was on the acupuncture table, it took a while to return to the dream. Gradually I began to see myself in what looked like a cloud. I was in an upright position with my hands pointing down, and I was slowly rising upwards. However, after just a short moment, I felt a tugging sensation on my feet, which stopped my upward motion. I realized that there was something that I had to release, but I didn't know what that was. All that was important was that I had to release it so that I could continue my ascension. Therefore, I took a long breath and told myself, "Let go." Instantly, I returned to my slow, but steady ascension upwards. Unfortunately, it was not long before I felt the tugging again. This time I knew what to do. I took a long breath and said, "Let go." Again and again, I had to let go, never even knowing what I was letting go of. I only knew that ascension was most important, and I had to continue. Eventually, I began to rise faster, and the tugging greatly diminished. It was then that I saw something far above me. Controlling my excitement, I patiently, and I don't do patience well, continued to float in an upward fashion towards the unknown. Thoughts drifted through my mind, but I could easily ignore them as I was beginning to feel the euphoria of the higher dimensions. My form started to tingle, my heart opened, and my third eye became focused on a blurry object above me. Eventually, all thoughts were released, and my emotions were only a sense of expectation and wonder. The tugging had stopped completely and the letting go was constant. I was living in surrender, and it felt natural. I felt a light emanating from me, and my body remained extremely hot. Then I saw a light from above, which resembled the dawn coming through a dusky morning. As I moved closer to the light, the object above me became increasingly clear. It was an orb with a face, but I could not recognize it, as the light was too bright. As the face came closer and closer, I still could not recognize it, but I knew who it was. It was me. It was the face of myself. As I went about my week, I remembered that me, but I could only recall it when I could let go of the drama, confusion, and 3D distractions. It was not difficult to let go, but it was very difficult to remember to let go. I found the below writing without a date, so I do not know at what time I wrote it. I had completely forgotten I had written this. Not sure what this is. In fact, I had forgotten I even had that experience. I write this now to remind us all that we must have patience with this process of ascension. Impatience creates anger and anger creates fear. Then, fear lowers our consciousness and puts our ascension process on hold until we can return to love, unconditional love. The path of ascension is paved with patience. We are accustomed to thinking in human time, but we are actually leaving time. Therefore, thinking in any time binds us to the third-dimensional paradigm from which we are trying to break free. In fact, trying also creates anger, which lowers our consciousness. Many people have asked the Arcturians, "What can I do to facilitate my ascension?" The Arcturians always give the same answer of, "Do what you love." Love is an action of letting go because love is based on faith and surrender. When we cannot surrender into love, the feeling of love dries up from the lack of our constant connection. Those of us who are in a loving relationship with any being, husband, wife, children, friend, animal, garden, job, creative project, know that we must keep our heart connected to that love in order to maintain it. In the same manner, We must keep our heart connected to our ascension process. It is helpful to write down our ascension experiences, as they can be forgotten in the struggles of daily life. Then one day when we are feeling like we have never had a real sign of our ascension, we can stumble onto a dream, a meditation, or a brief moment that we experienced years ago to affirm that we are ascending. Then we can regain our patience. Note from Sue. As I looked through my old files, I discovered that I had to release my 3D addiction to the sequence of time. Once I could follow this timeless thread, I discovered that, if we follow the outer signs that are showing us what we have received inside and forgot, we understand how our life is talking to us in the now. Channeled by Suzanne Lee. SuzanneLeePhD.blogspot.com